Pay close attention to the woman in this footage. This is 33-year-old Sarah Everard. It's 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night, March 3, 2021. She's walking home through the streets of South London. She's calm, collected, and completely unaware that someone is already watching her. In less than an hour, she will vanish, and her disappearance will shake an entire nation. And moments earlier, sometime happened, but before we review that, do us one favor, tell us your name and where you are watching from in the comments. So let's go. Moments earlier, Sarah had been visiting a friend's house near Clapham Common. The two women had spent the evening catching up, sharing drinks, and talking about how much they missed normal life. England was still under strict COVID lockdown rules. Bars and restaurants were closed, streets were quiet, and the world still felt fragile and half asleep. When the clock neared 9, Sarah decided it was time to head home. It was a journey she'd made many times before, about a 50-minute walk from her friend's home to her flat in Brixton Hill. She was careful, as always. She wore bright clothes, stayed on well-lit streets, and called her boyfriend as she began her walk. She did everything right. Her boyfriend, Josh, later said their conversation was casual, the kind of call couples make at the end of a normal day. They talked about seeing each other soon, about how tired they were of lockdown life. The call ended at 9:28 p.m. Sarah was still on the move, passing through the quiet streets near Pointers Road. London was unusually still that night. Few cars, fewer people. The city's heartbeat had slowed to a faint pulse. Streetlights glowed softly against damp pavement. The sound of her footsteps was almost the only thing breaking the silence. She was less than a mile from home, but at the same time, on those same streets, another figure was moving. A man in dark clothing driving a white Vauxhall Astra. His name was Wayne Couzens, a 48-year-old serving police officer with the Metropolitan Police. By day, he wore the uniform of authority. By night, he had begun to wear something else, the mask of a predator. Earlier that day, Couzens had worked a shift guarding U.S. Embassy buildings in London as part of a unit known as the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command. After clocking out, he drove to Kent, where he lived with his wife and 2 children. But sometime after, he left again, this time in a rented white car he had picked up 2 days earlier. He wasn't heading anywhere. He was hunting. Traffic camera footage later revealed the truth. For nearly 2 hours, Couzens circled the streets near Clapham Common. He drove up and down main roads, slowing down when he saw a woman walking alone, then speeding off again. Investigators would later call this a premeditated search for a victim. And around 9:30 p.m., he saw Sarah, a woman walking alone, calm, trusting, ordinary. He pulled the car over and stepped out. In his hand, a warrant card. On his belt, handcuffs. And in his voice, the tone of command that made people obey. The next few minutes were captured only in fragments. Silent, grainy CCTV from a passing bus and security cameras along the road. You can see Sarah standing near the curb, facing him. You can see his arm raised slightly, gesturing as if explaining something. To anyone watching, it looked routine, a police officer enforcing lockdown rules. 2 witnesses walked by. They saw a woman being handcuffed. One of them even thought she must have done something wrong. No one intervened. Why would they? It looked like the law in action. But it wasn't. It was a kidnapping under color of law. Couzens told Sarah she was being arrested for breaching COVID restrictions. He showed his badge. He handcuffed her hands behind her back. He told her to get into the car. And she did. Because that's what we're all taught to do. Trust the badge, trust authority, trust that uniform. When the car door shut and the locks clicked, the sound was final. That single metallic sound separated the world Sarah knew from the nightmare she was entering. He drove away from the city lights, heading southeast, towards Kent. Traffic cameras picked up the white Astra multiple times on the journey. In one still image, Sarah is believed to be sitting in the back seat, alive. By the time that car left the London area, it was nearing midnight. No one knows exactly what happened during that drive. But police later discovered that Couzens stopped in a remote area of Kent. He used his police belt to restrain her further. At some point during those dark hours, he raped and murdered her. Then, he placed her body in a builder's bag, set fire to it, and left the remains in a wooded area near a place called Hodes Wood, close to land he owned. Back in London, Sarah's absence was beginning to set off alarm bells. By Thursday morning, her boyfriend realized something was wrong. She hadn't texted, hadn't answered his calls. She had promised to message when she got home, but there was nothing. At first, he thought maybe her phone died. Maybe she fell asleep. But as the hours stretched on, the silence grew heavier. He called her again and again. No answer. By evening, he contacted the police. Sarah Everard was officially reported missing. Within hours, officers began tracing her last known movements. They found the CCTV near her friend's house, the cameras along Pointers Road, the bus footage showing her speaking with a man. They began to piece together her final moments, the last known images of Sarah alive. The city was gripped by fear. Women across the UK saw her face on the news and felt a chill run through them. Because Sarah had done everything right. She walked on main roads. She wore bright clothes. She told people where she was going. And still, she disappeared. Flyers were printed. Posters went up. Volunteers searched the parks, rivers, and woods of South London. The phrase "Find Sarah Everard" flooded social media. For days, there were no answers, only questions. How could a woman vanish from one of the busiest cities in the world? How could someone disappear without a trace, in plain sight of CCTV cameras and streetlights? But the truth was already in motion, hidden behind the badge of a man who had sworn to protect. Wayne Couzens went back to work. He texted his family. He cleaned his car. He even ordered a new phone case on Amazon. He lived his life as though nothing had happened. But small cracks began to appear. Detectives reviewing the footage noticed the white Astra. They traced the registration to a rental company. The rental records led to a name, Wayne Couzens, a serving police officer. When they searched his phone and home, the evidence began to unfold like a nightmare. Receipts for the hire car, CCTV from a fuel station, location data that matched the route from London to Kent. And later, the most chilling evidence of all, the discovery of human remains in a wooded area near his property. Sarah Everard was found on March 10th, 1 week after she disappeared. And with that discovery, London and the entire nation changed forever. By the morning after Sarah Everard disappeared, the quiet streets of London carried an unease that seemed almost tangible. For a city accustomed to constant motion, a missing person in the middle of lockdown was like a stone thrown into still water, ripples spreading outward, disturbing the calm. Sarah's boyfriend, friends, and family had tried to convince themselves that she had simply taken a longer route, had been delayed by errands, or that her phone had died. But as hours passed without contact, those rationalizations crumbled. A creeping fear began to take hold. Something was terribly wrong. The first break came from CCTV footage. Investigators meticulously reviewed the streets Sarah had walked that night. There she was, leaving her friend's flat, her figure bright under the street lamps, a single bag over her shoulder. Each frame showed her moving with purpose, confidence, and the normalcy of someone who believed in her safety. And then the footage captured the white Vauxhall Astra. The car slowed as it approached her. A man stepped out. He showed a badge. He handcuffed her, and he led her to the car. At first glance, it looked legitimate, an officer doing his duty. But when investigators traced the car rental records, a chilling realization emerged. The driver was Wayne Couzens, a serving police officer. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. A police officer, sworn to protect, had kidnapped a woman walking home in a city he was tasked to safeguard. The betrayal was not just personal, it was institutional. It shook the public trust to its core. Meanwhile, outside the confines of the investigation, London and the country at large were gripped by anxiety. Social media lit up with messages from friends and strangers alike. People shared her photos, locations, and pleas for information. Volunteers searched parks, alleyways, and riversides, calling out her name into the wind. Flyers went up on street lamps, buses, and shop windows. "Have you seen Sarah Everard?" Every unturned stone, every shadowed pathway, carried a collective hope that she might still be found. Investigators began piecing together the movements of the white Astra. CCTV cameras along major routes, petrol stations, and car parks revealed a deliberate path, London to Kent. Couzens had switched vehicles during the journey, transferring Sarah to his family car, a black Vauxhall, which he would later use to transport her to the remote location where she met her death. The meticulousness of his plan, the cold precision with which he moved, was terrifying. Each action was calculated, each pause measured. The evidence, though horrifying, told a clear story of premeditation. Then came the calls to emergency services. Police received reports of a missing woman, but they had no idea at first who was responsible. Family members spoke in broken voices, trying to communicate the growing dread in their hearts. "We can't reach her. She hasn't answered any of her messages. She should be home by now." The officers on the case began cross-referencing all information: CCTV footage, witness statements, vehicle registrations, and social media activity. Everything pointed to one conclusion: Sarah had been deliberately taken from the streets. During this period, Wayne Couzens maintained the appearance of normality. He returned to work, went about daily life, and in public he was an ordinary man. But in the shadows, the investigation was closing in. Small details, a fuel receipt, a hire car rental, a CCTV camera at a petrol station, began forming a chain that led directly to him. As the hours stretched into days, public concern turned to anger and fear. Women across the UK felt a personal connection to Sarah's disappearance. Stories poured in from friends, family, and strangers, recounting the countless precautions women take daily. Walking in well-lit areas, keeping phones in hand, gripping keys tightly. Sarah had followed all those rules, and still she vanished. The investigation intensified. Police officers, detectives, and forensic teams scoured every lead. Traffic cameras revealed the journey from London to Kent, the stops along the way, the switch between vehicles. Investigators reconstructed the timeline with grim precision, piecing together a journey that culminated in unimaginable horror. 2 days later, forensic teams located the area where Sarah had been held and later murdered. While the full details of her death were not immediately released, the evidence indicated the unthinkable. She had been assaulted and killed in a way that betrayed the very trust placed in law enforcement. The nation watched in horror as Wayne Couzens was arrested. The fact that a police officer, a symbol of safety and authority, had committed such a heinous act intensified the outrage and grief. The public's trust, already shaken by the isolation and fear of lockdown, was shattered. Families everywhere were reminded of the precariousness of safety, the fragility of trust. The streets that once seemed secure suddenly felt menacing. And women, who had long understood the unspoken rules of caution, saw in Sarah's story the proof that even those rules were not enough. For Sarah's family, the hours of uncertainty were unbearable. They lived in the space between hope and despair, imagining every possible scenario, none of them good. Each day without answers added layers of anguish. Each new detail of the investigation, once revealed, brought both clarity and heartbreak. By the end of that week, the picture was beginning to form. CCTV footage, witness reports, and vehicle tracking had all pointed to a single perpetrator: Wayne Couzens. The man who had promised to protect the public had been the instrument of terror. The streets that Sarah had walked were no longer just streets. They were a timeline of betrayal. Each lamppost, each corner, each empty pavement was a step in a journey she should have completed safely, and did not. And the country waited for confirmation, waited for justice. As we uncover the truth and how justice was served, I have one question for you. What would you do differently if you were in Sarah's situation? Drop on the comment, and don't forget to subscribe now and turn on notifications to witness the final part of this case. The truth, when it came, was unbearable. On March 10, 2021, Sarah Everard's body was discovered in Hodes Wood, Kent. The serene countryside, normally a place of quiet beauty, became a scene of unimaginable horror. Investigators confirmed what the evidence had already suggested. She had been kidnapped, raped, and murdered. And the person responsible was a man sworn to uphold the law, Wayne Couzens, a serving Metropolitan Police officer. The details that emerged from the investigation were chilling. CCTV had captured his meticulous movements, renting a car, circling South London streets, stopping near Sarah, coercing her under the guise of authority. He had handcuffed her hands behind her back, restricting her movement entirely. He had transferred her from the hire car to his family car and driven her to a remote location in Kent. There, in the darkness, he violated every instinct of trust and safety. 2 days later, he was seen on CCTV buying petrol, the fuel he would later use to attempt to destroy the evidence of his crime. He bought builder's bags at a local store, carrying out the final act of calculated cruelty. Sarah had been denied the chance for a goodbye, her family denied closure. When the truth became public, the nation reacted with shock, grief, and anger. People struggled to comprehend that a woman had been taken from the streets of London by someone wearing a police uniform. Women everywhere were reminded of the everyday precautions they took. Walking in well-lit areas, carrying keys between their fingers, staying alert, and realized that even following the rules might not protect them. Sarah's family spoke openly of their pain. Her mother described the last moments before the abduction. The terror, the helplessness, the silent scream she let out as she imagined her daughter in danger. Her sister recounted the haunting replay of Sarah's final hours in her mind, a torment that would never fade. Her father spoke of the irreparable damage inflicted upon their lives, a pain that no sentence could ever match. In court, Wayne Couzens pleaded guilty to kidnap, rape, and murder. During the trial, he sat with his head bowed, unwilling to meet the eyes of the family he had destroyed. But the evidence was overwhelming. The CCTV footage, the witness accounts, the forensic findings, all painted a picture of premeditated, cold-blooded crime. The sentencing, though necessary, could not repair what had been broken. It was a moment that exposed a fundamental betrayal, not only of Sarah Everard, but of every woman who trusts the uniform of those meant to protect them. Beyond the courtroom, Sarah's story became a catalyst for reflection and change. The case ignited a national conversation about the safety of women, the culture within police forces, and the everyday vulnerabilities women face. Experts and activists emphasized that the problem was not just individual but cultural, a deeply ingrained pattern of male violence and systemic failure. Caroline Noakes, chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, highlighted the need for societal transformation. Women should not bear the sole responsibility for their safety. Schools, law enforcement, and public policy must address the roots of gendered violence. She stressed that incidents like Sarah's were symptomatic of broader cultural problems: the harassment, predatory behavior, and underestimation of women's vulnerability that too often escalate into fatal outcomes. Former police chief constables and victims' advocates echoed the call. They pointed to a long history of misconduct, the lack of empathy in law enforcement, and the need for structural reform. Misogyny as a hate crime, better training, and accountability for predatory officers were cited as essential steps toward ensuring no woman had to live in fear as Sarah did. Yet, for Sarah's family and for the nation, the emotional impact remained profound and unyielding. Her mother, sister, and father had their lives irrevocably altered. The simple trust that women place in society, the expectation of safety on a routine walk home, had been shattered. Even as the courts delivered justice, it could not undo the betrayal, the violence, or the loss. Sarah Everard's death became a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the importance of vigilance, accountability, and cultural change. And yet, amid the grief, a solemn hope emerged. Hope that Sarah's story would spark lasting awareness, that her life, taken far too soon, would not be forgotten, that her name would serve as a beacon, a call for action, and a warning. The world must not allow this to happen again. In remembering Sarah, society began to reflect on the changes that must follow. Enforcing the law, reshaping culture, addressing predatory behavior, and protecting the vulnerable. Her case became more than a tragedy. It became a movement, a painful, necessary awakening to the realities women face every day. London would never look the same. The streets that had once been routine and familiar were now viewed through a lens of vigilance and sorrow. And across the United Kingdom, women walked with a heightened awareness, a painful inheritance of fear born from the life and death of one remarkable woman who had done nothing but walk home. Sarah Everard's story ended in tragedy. But in telling it, the world could confront the truths too long ignored, honor the life that was stolen, and commit to a future where women can walk freely without fear. Her name remains a warning, her story a call to conscience, and her life, though taken, continues to inspire change. A reminder that society must never again fail a woman walking home. If you want to honor Sarah Everard and continue exploring stories like hers, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every story matters, every life matters. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.